Lately, I have been avoiding painting unless it's for a full illustration. And by a full illustration, I mean multiple characters and a detailed background. And this means like a ton of thumbnails, all of the value and color comps, which doesn't let me practice watercolor. And I desperately need to, because I feel like my techniques and where I'm at with my watercolor skills are lacking right now in comparison to where I'm at with my drawing skills. In my art journey, if you didn't know, I started out using alcohol-based markers, and then I worked with watercolors for multiple years, and after that I jumped back and forth between a whole slew of mediums until I got to gouache when I started this channel, and I've slowly worked my way back towards watercolors, which has always had a very special place in my heart. I've always loved the look of watercolors, both in other people's illustrations and in mine. I've always seen them as a comfort medium for me, but I am very rusty with them and I don't really know how to work them into the art style that I have been developing. So instead of waiting for the next big illustration idea, I decided to create a series of small illustrations for me to practice and try to get a better idea of what I want for my watercolor art style. I do want to share multiple of those here, but I will have some that are only on Patreon and some that will be featured in next week's video, which will be a very big, very art-filled video, so I highly recommend sticking around for that one. I think that my first mistake with this illustration was going in too dark with that yellow wash. I've noticed with some of my other illustrations that I've been working on, some of these smaller ones, that when I do a lighter yellow wash, it is much easier to layer on top of. For this illustration, I wanted to do a pinky red shadow. If you haven't seen my other videos, in my watercolor illustrations, I tend to stick to a yellow-blue theme, which I really love. I think that it works with most of my illustrations, but I do think that experimenting with different shadow colors could be really fascinating and help create a different feeling than the illustrations that I've been making lately. So I wanted to take this time to test it out, especially because this was on February 13th, I think. So it was right there next to Valentine's Day, and I was really inspired to just jump in and try this thing out since it was also on the theme. I think that this red shadow palette, it ends up looking kind of weird in a lot of areas. I'll talk about that more towards the end when you can actually see the areas that I'm talking about, but I think that it wasn't really effective in certain areas. I started this illustration from a sketch in my sketchbook that I absolutely loved. I did a few doodles because I noticed a lot of artists were coming out with illustration videos, and I did a Valentine's Day card, and that was about it. So I thought I could do a little bit more Valentine's Day themed artwork. So I came up with a few doodles and I absolutely fell in love with this one. So that's why I wanted to paint it. However, I did decide to sketch directly on the watercolor paper, and I'm kind of sad that I did that because I just now realized while recording this voiceover that I could have just taken a picture of the sketch that I did in my sketchbook and then use my iPad to transfer it. Usually I will do a separate sketch on a separate sheet of paper that's a lot thinner and cheaper, and then use my Lightbox to transfer it to the watercolor page, but I decided not to do that because I wanted to save on time. But I could have saved even more time if I had just transferred the sketch from my sketchbook onto the watercolor paper using my iPad. I've begun to realize how restrictive I have been with my watercolor technique. So I've been really working on fixing that among other issues that I've been having in my artwork. I've been really working on honing my skills, and that will be what next week's video is about. I've noticed that I love to make up a lot of rules for myself based on what seems to be working for other people and other artists. I do this both in art and in my life, and I choose to follow other people instead of exploring things for myself. So for the rest of February, I am taking this step to start exploring my watercolors for myself instead of listening to the techniques and advice of other artists. In this piece, I immediately started off by rendering the skin, and I do regret that. I think that those areas of the illustration are honestly my least favorite. I think I definitely overdid it with the face. I don't really know what happened, but it doesn't look right. There are certain parts of it that I think were really successful, but there's a lot of the rendering that I think really ruined the face. I think that it looks fine. It's not bad, but I do think that there are a lot of ways that I could have done things better. Part of why the shading in this illustration suffered was because I didn't have an idea of where the light source was coming from, and I do this a lot where I just kind of make it up as I go. It doesn't really help for when I'm rendering out the face or the hair or clothes or literally anything else in the illustration. So that's why I think that it was really difficult for me to render out all of the various areas because I quite frankly didn't know what I was doing. So that's something that I'm definitely gonna have to work on in my future illustrations. I also noticed lately how obsessive that I am with making sure that everything looks smooth, and I've been doing this technique for a while where I do a lot of the rendering of the face and skin and those kinds of details, and then I put a skin tone wash over the top and it washes away a lot of the work that I've done, and that's all for the sake of making things smooth. But I'm also realizing that I'm wasting so much time by rendering out the skin to a point that I'm happy with, and then covering the whole thing with a more correct skin tone layer. I don't think that that was as bad in this illustration, but in some of the other small character illustrations that I've been working on, I completely ruin by using this technique. So I'm definitely going to have to push myself to explore outside of this one. Another part of the illustration process that has been really bugging me lately is that I don't know when I should or shouldn't be putting a dark outline around areas of the character. I don't want it to be too dark because I don't want it to just be like a black outline, but I do want it to be distinguishable from the background. And this could simply be because I am not doing a background with these character illustrations and I'm making the skin too light. Sometimes I also do it if the edge of that particular area isn't smooth enough. I don't know if I should be fixing that with water or just trying to be more patient with my watercolor layers. I honestly don't know how to fix that or how to change it or what I should be doing differently. But like I said before, I am definitely going to have to spend a lot of time experimenting and finding out what works for me and what I want in my art instead of doing what I see other artists doing. I was really upset with how I went in too dark with the sweater. I wanted it to be a purpley red color, which it does look that way in real life. It does look a lot more red on camera, but I was really upset that I had gone it way too dark because I wanted to do a pattern on it, but once it had dried and I realized just how dark it was, I just knew that it was going to be way too much if I had done a pattern on top. So I was really sad that I didn't get to do that. So instead, when I went to paint the socks, I did some vertical stripes, and I think that that was a really cute detail that I would love to implement into my other character illustrations. When it came to painting the overalls, this is the biggest problem area, I feel like, with the pink shadow color. And this could just be that I didn't go dark enough with some of my shadow areas, but I don't like how much the pink shows through in certain areas. I think that it looks very strange. I like how it looks directly underneath the arms when I get it more finished, but I definitely went way too dark with the pink around the little folded areas on the thighs. I think that it just looks strange in the end, and like I said, it could just be that I didn't go dark enough with some more blue tones. With my other illustrations that I'm working on, it's mostly the same character with very similar shoes, and I really like the idea of them being black. However, with the tonal range of the rest of the character, I feel like black would be too stark of a contrast, so I've been making it the same color as the hair, and I think that that looks really cute, and I think that it helps keep it dark but not too dark. I do wish that I went darker with the shoes in this illustration, but I think that they still end up looking okay. I know I complained a lot throughout this video about the things in my art that I'm unhappy with, but I do want to say that I am really happy with this illustration. I think it's very cute, and in general it is very successful because the whole purpose is for me to learn what I do and don't like, and this has taught me a lot about things that I want to change. So it's doing what I wanted it to do. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I highly, highly, highly recommend sticking around for next week's video because it has been a crazy video to film. I'm basically learning all of the fundamentals and sharing all of that with you guys. So definitely stick around for that. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.